Welcome back to Verkada Access Control Deep Dive, a series of videos where I'll be discussing not only the hardware aspects of this solution, but also the software capabilities and configuration. Now, I'm aware that I have not done a video on access control for quite a while now. I sporadically posted short videos about certain updates, but I felt like as the year is closing, it would be a great time to look back at this and update. So if you are following the playlist and you're trying to learn how our products work, you'll be able to have all the information under the same umbrella. And in today's video, I'm going to discuss the hardware lineup, because if you're following Verkada, you know that once every few quarters, we do try to update all our devices to make sure that we are on top of the latest technological developments and trends. So let's start with the most important aspect, the access controller itself. Now, I know that my original videos are predicated on the AC42 that I actually have installed in my garage. However, you do have three options when it comes to the controller itself. You can get the 4-door controller, you can get the huge AC62 16-door controller, or you can go for the small AC12 that can cater for one door. So how do you choose? Well, make your life easy. If it's a rip and replace and you already have cables running to a controller today, look at that and try to exchange the original controller for a new one. Also taking into account any potential growth. So if, let's say, you have a controller that caters for 8 doors, you could replace that with 2 4-door controllers. However, if there is a need in the near future to expand those doors, then maybe you should go for a 16-door controller and have that spare capacity in the future. Do remember that we license per door, so at least initially you only need to purchase 8 licenses. Now, when it comes to new builds, it all depends on how far the doors are from each other. If you have them very, very close and it's very easy to run low voltage electric cables to a central point, then sure, go for the AC42, go for the AC62. However, you might also want to consider getting one of these AC12s on top of each of the doors. That will minimize the span of these cables and make sure that when you connect this to your local infrastructure, you only need a regular Ethernet cable. And this is very important because, again, access control projects tend to be very expensive, and for a lot of geographies, Ethernet cables are cheaper than the usual cables that are used for access control. We do have clear indications on our website on what diameter of cables you should be using and whether or not they should be shielded or not. Very important for the readers because you don't want them to misbehave while people are trying to tap in. But in a nutshell, there is always a correlation between the power that the cable is supplying to, for example, a maglock, and the thickness of it. If the cable is very, very thin, then it's going to get hot and you're potentially running the risk of setting the whole thing on fire. So if this is something very new to you, I would suggest to get in touch with a qualified electrician, because these sort of things are very easy to miss but critical when it comes to deploying access control in a safe manner. I did mention that the AC12 needs an Ethernet cable. Well, actually all our controllers do in order to connect to the internet. The only difference is that as opposed to plugging this into a socket, as you would the AC42 and the 62 via just a regular kettle cable, this will actually get power via PoE. There are different standards of PoE. You have PoE, you have PoE plus, PoE plus plus, etc. And there is a table that I'm going to leave here to instruct you to understand what functions are actually available depending on the type of power that you supply to this unit. Another small thing to consider is the actual backup in case the power goes down, because the bigger models have terminals that you can actually connect multiple batteries to them. However, this being a very small model that is not supposed to go in the comms room, is supposed to go on top of the door in the secure part, does not have the same capabilities. So if you really want to make sure that this is still operational, the actual power redundancy has to be done on the switch side. So make sure that the switch has an uninterrupted power supply or has 2 power supplies that are actually hooked up to the 2 different power lines. So in case one of them goes down, the other one takes over and your controllers are still left standing. Two more things to note when it comes to the controllers. The 42 and the 62 do have dedicated fire alarm circuits. So in case the fire alarm rings, then they will just take out the powers for any locks that run wet, meaning that the locks themselves take power from the controller in order to operate, while this one does not. So you either need to use a power supply, a power controller, or wire your fire relay in series with the lock and the access controller. Again, the second thing I wanted to mention is the ability to do in and out badging. This is something that Verkada started supporting about a year back, and for the big controllers, you'll actually need to use two door slots and define them in command as paired together and pointing to a single physical door. With this actually has multiple terminals, so you'll have two Wiegand, two OSDP interfaces, and the reason being is that it will support out of the box an in and out door. Now that we scoped the controllers, let's think about the readers. When I started at Verkada, we had the AD31. That was the original reader that was accepting cards and fobs and Bluetooth unlock. And now we're actually at the 4th generation. You have two options, depending whether or not you want a pin pad or not. So you have the AD34 that does not, and then the AD64 that has the same capabilities, but offers a pin pad to allow you for things such as two-factor authentication or people getting in only by pressing a set of keys. Both these readers do OSDP. They communicate securely via that interface to the controller and allow you to use cards, fobs, Bluetooth with intent to unlock. So this is where you actually wave at the reader instead of unlocking it by mistake, and very highly requested NFC unlock. So this is where you make your card as part of your digital wallet, and that works on both Apple and Android. And then you have two options, either one in which you just present the phone and you get in, or the one that you need to authenticate before. So this is where you can use the face or the fingerprint, depending on the phone's capabilities, to get into a premise. And the reason why this is very important is that you might have certain doors or certain locations where you might want to move away from things such as cards and fobs. You want to embrace something very new, like using your phone to get in, but you're concerned that somebody might steal somebody else's phone and make their way through the building. Because again, with Bluetooth, that's the whole point of it. You can leave your phone in the pocket, in your bag, and you can just get in straight through the door without doing anything else. Remember that we do have support for third-party Wiegand readers as well. And the main reasons that you might want to use that is if you want trying to save cost, you might have a brownfield deployment where you already have those sort of readers and you do not want to change them. It's not really ideal because, again, if you're using our reader, you have the two-way communication, you have the updates, you have the status from command, and you have the 10-year warranty and full support. However, if, again, you're pressed by financial constraints, you might look into upgrading those readers later. The other two important reasons would be if you're using specialized cards such as HID I-Class, which can only be read by a HID reader, or you're using biometric authentication. So that will be using companies like Suprema that have the BioStar readers, where the reader itself will match the card with the face or the fingerprint, and if that is successful, will transmit via the Wiegand interface the actual card numbers for the controllers. So then the controller will look into its access levels and decide whether or not that person is allowed through that door at that particular time. The last thing I wanted to mention is the fact that Verkada now sells their own credentials. So if you're in a position where you're deploying access control for the first time, or you want to replace your cards with something more secure, then actually Verkada can offer you encrypted high-frequency cards. We also sell low-frequency unencrypted cards, aka the prox cards. I don't usually recommend those because, again, low-frequency cards are not encrypted, and with the help of something like a Flipper Zero, which is a device that can actually scan the wireless, you can actually clone cards. So for those of you who actually want to purchase cards or even fobs, I would actually recommend the MyFair Desfire EV3 cards that we currently sell. Again, they are high frequency, so very, very hard to intercept, and also they are encrypted.